Remember those women in Mark's gospel who discover Jesus' body is missing and run away bewildered and trembling, so overwhelmed they can find no voice to say anything to anyone about what they are experiencing? Most of us who have experienced loss can understand. We know about feeling overwhelmed, unfocused, scattered, speechless, terrified in those initial days, maybe weeks or longer, of coping with staggering loss. As the ground shifts beneath our feet and what was normal and familiar to us is changing in monumental ways we cannot even comprehend in the moment, we understand, for those who follow Jesus, what life might have been like after Jesus was killed. As the expected numbness and shock begin to give way to the reality of the loss, we start to understand, just like the disciples, that what has been is gone forever, even though we don't know what lies ahead, when we cannot even consider what the future may hold. The women and the other disciples had been excited about where they were going with Jesus. Then everything changed in what seemed like an instant. Now clearly what they had expected, what they had hoped and dreamed for, what they had planned on, what they had thought they were working for is not going to happen, at least not the way they had planned it. As those who follow Jesus absorb the loss, as we absorb our own losses, the future, which is uncertain at best, hangs in the balance. We begin to realize a void in our lives, a vacuum, a nothingness where we know we cannot go back, but it is so hard to even think about moving forward. There is an empty space that nothing and no one can fill. But still, many of us try to fill the space, that emptiness, that void, with excessive busyness. Or we may completely deny the void in our lives as if it isn't there, or has little importance, or is something to run away from faster than the women fleeing from the empty tomb. Sometimes we try to fill the hole in our hearts with religious platitudes, which may sound good at the time, but leave us still empty. And our society is of little help here, almost forcing us to get on with life, ready or not. There are cultures, indigenous and contemporary as well, where people facing major life changes are allowed long periods of time to adjust to the new realities of their lives, time to find their new normal for living. But our culture provides no time or space for such things, no space for living in the betwixt and between, letting go of what has been, being prepared for what is yet to be. There is little time to grieve. A quick return to life, pretty much the way it was, impossible as that may be, is the high expectation. We are taught to deny our pain, show supposed strength through stoicism, busily get back to almost frenetic activity, live in joy and weep not, at least not for very long. Then we read in the Bible, the things we read in the Bible, though perhaps not translated and interpreted very accurately, can even encourage this way of thinking and these societal views. In the Psalms we read, "Weeping may endure for a night, but joy comes in the morning." The problem is, no one tells us just how terribly long that night is going to be, or what needs to happen in the long, dark night of the soul if real joy has a chance of finding us once more. But spending time in the empty space of our loss, remaining in the empty night long enough for the dawn to break in once more, is essential. We need time to acknowledge and actually to feel the many things happening within us, the many changes occurring in our lives. We need time to recall and reflect on memories and stories and experiences, so a person's gone and the way things used to be remain a significant part of us, even in their absence from us. We need time to live intentionally with the pain deep in our hearts, feeling all those bewildering, confusing, mixed feelings, which become our constant companions, whether we recognize them or completely miss their presence, their very real presence in our souls. We need time to grieve what we have lost, whom we have loved, the life we knew before. We need time to catch our breath and find ourselves if we are going to move on in healthy, meaningful ways. You may remember me talking about my 84-year-old friend, Esther from Texas, who passed from this life in October. Visiting Esther in her last days and officiating at her 2 memorial services was very helpful to me, partly because of the opportunities they presented to remember and to more strongly make these memories a part of my being. On December 7th, the birthday of her late husband, Ed, I missed being able to send Esther a poinsettia. I missed the box of citrus fruit Esther sent us every Christmas. I didn't need the fruit. I could buy fruit for our family, and others, in fact, did send us citrus, but I missed Esther's box of citrus because I miss Esther. On Good Friday, I remembered again this year that her husband, Ed, died on Good Friday several years ago, but I couldn't call Esther to talk with her this year or send her an Easter lily. I missed all the time since October. I couldn't pick up the phone and talk with Esther. I'll miss sending her a greeting on Mother's Day and sending her flowers in August for her birthday. I'll miss all those times I won't be able to call her to talk about whatever there is to talk about. I've needed time to miss Esther. I need more time to miss my friend. And how critically important it is to take time to absorb our losses, living mindfully into the void of loss, intentionally remaining in that empty space for a while, rather than trying to move on as if all is well while the ground of our lives is shaking and breaking apart. The sadness, the loneliness within us, the sense of surreal existence around us, the dynamics swirling among us in the aftermath of loss, especially staggering loss, need to be on our radar screen. But how effectively are we living into the losses, the void in our own lives? How effectively is our congregation living into the losses, into the void from past losses of this congregation? How often does our unrecognized pain show itself in inopportune moments and in inappropriate ways? We need intentional time, not just passing time, but intentional time spent dealing with the pain when loss meets us. We need time before we can move from the dark night of the soul into the joy that can come in the morning.